gentleman was just standing in the middle of the intersection, and just right out in the middle. So I rolled my window down, and I said, "Hey, come over here, what's going on?" And the guy turns to me and jogs right over to me, and he comes abnormally close to the car, right up to my window, and I kind of back up. His eyes are super wide, he's just sweating all over the top of his head, and he said, "I've got warrants, we need to talk," something to that effect. And I said, "Okay, we'll go sit on the curb, and I'll call this out, okay, I'll come talk to you." I pick up the mic, and I'm about to call out, like 968's worth of one, and I immediately realize something's wrong. The guy is walking around the car, and he's just fixated in on my partner in the passenger seat. He's just kind of staring at him. He's really close to the car, and I'm just watching the whole time, because at this point I start to realize something's wrong here. This isn't right. And he comes right up to the window, and there's some talk between them. I don't hear everything, but I hear him say, "I'm gonna punch you in your face." And then Shane says, I call my partner Shane, that's his middle name. But he says, "Okay, well, I'm gonna roll the window up." And he starts to roll the window up, and the guy starts punching the window. And then there's like a struggle over the door. And so at that point, I drop the mic, and I immediately run around to try and get control of this guy. And my intended purpose is to take him to the ground and put him in cuffs. I mean, he's out of control. He's trying to assault my partner. But he turns to me as soon as I get about to the front of the car, runs at me, and he grabs me by my vest. I'm trying to grab him, and he lifts me off my feet and throws me on my back in the middle of the street. I left my feet. And it was about at this moment I knew something was up. This guy who had superhuman strength. I pop back up, and he and Shane are in a physical fight. And from this point on, it's just a melee. It's just wild. There's fists flying. I run in, and I'm a grappler by background, so I immediately grab him and I try and take him to the ground. At some point, I end up on top of him. He's just swinging wildly at me, grabbing at me, and he's like growling and just making like kind of animal noises, not saying anything. And I'm striking him now while he's on the ground, but it's having no effect. He's on his back completely. I'm mounted around his torso, and he's lifting me up, and he kind of lunges at my face, and I'm able to move to the side, and at that point we fall. Now we're both laying on our sides. I have his back, and I'm facing now the intersection. We're both facing the same way, and I feel like I'm about to lose control of this guy again. And so I attempt to get him an LBNR. I'm behind him. I slide my hand around to where my bicep is about on the side of his face. And before I can apply an LBNR, I see Shane come back into the scene. He circles around in front of me, and his taser's out. And I hear the crack of his taser, and it has that immediate neuromuscular incapacitation effect where the guy locks up, his whole body locks up. So at that point, I come off the LBNR, I push him down, face down, and I move to his left arm. And I tell Shane, grab his right arm, so Shane goes to the right arm. But at this point, you feel the taser, we try to cuff him under power, but you feel the taser lose that effect, and the guy comes back too and starts growling again, and his hands start kind of hulking away from us. So at that point, my entire body is around. I have both arms wrapped around his arm, and I'm just clenched on his arm, trying to move it to his back. And he's fighting us. And I feel Shane give him another round from the taser. So there's another cycle of the taser that happens. His body locks back up, and we start to move him, and eventually we get him into cuffs from here. Once he's cuffed, the fight's not over. He kind of comes back to, again, starts growling, and now he's trying to stand up. His legs are kind of going underneath him. He's face down on the ground, handcuffed behind his back, and he starts lifting himself up. So Shane jumps on his back, and I move to his feet, and I kind of crisscross his feet, so I put one foot in the crook of his knee, and then I put the other foot down, and I'm pressing his feet down so that he can't get his knees underneath him. And at that point, I can start hearing sirens, there's other units coming, and I ask for hobbles, because we still don't have control of this guy. I believe the first officers that showed up were Masai and Tim Rankin. So Masai Ford and Tim Rankin. They were the first to show up. I asked for hobbles. I had to ask a couple times, and I think some were finally found. I'm not sure who brought them. But I remember someone took over for Shane on the subject's back, holding control downward. I was still on his feet because I saw Shane come in the picture with the hobbles. He looped them around the subject's feet, and then I'm not sure who connected them onto his hands. They get connected, and then shortly after that, it was like I looked up and there was tons of cops there. County was there. There was probably 10 other officers, and at this point I'm pretty smoked. I had that like lactic acid feeling in my forearms. My hands were just, they were almost frozen. They were like locked up. So I just stepped away. Shane and I both backed up, and they had control of the guy. And I heard Shane say somewhere in there, "Hey, let's get him in the recovery position." So they put him on his side. And I walked away from it at that point, and there was a bunch of other people on top of him. And I remember, the last thing I really remember was him kind of like spitting at people, and then they put a spit mask on him. And when fire arrived, I went up to the guys to kind of give them a rundown and just said, I had time to kind of process what had just happened by then. But I said, hey, I don't know what's going on, but I think this guy might be excited delirium. Like, it was just kind of freakish strength, and he just wasn't really speaking to us. It was just out of control. And that was what I told them, and then they went up, and then shortly after, I think maybe a minute after of them over him, they started doing CPR. And then somewhere in there, Sergeant Lim showed up, my supervisor, Mike Lim, and he came over to the car and just said, like, what happened, guys? Because I wasn't able to get anything out on the radio. I tried to say fighting a couple times, and I took one in the jaw one time trying to get to my radio. I mean, it was a knockdown, drag-out fight. So I just told him, like, hey, so here's what happened. Here's why we couldn't call it out. This is what it is. And then he turned and he saw a fighter doing CPR, and he said, look, I don't know how we're going to treat this, but because we're doing CPR, let's just do like a officer involved shooting. Why don't you go to your car and just wait for further instructions? And then my lieutenant showed up. Lieutenant Euler is on scene now. There was a county sergeant talking with Sergeant Lim, and then Sergeant Lim came to my car with another fellow officer, Herbert Chung, who works in our sector, and he said, hey, Carlton, why don't you go with Chung, and he's going to take you to a county substation, which was here, for processing. And that's where I came, and they took pictures of my injuries, and they took my taser. They did a round count, and I think that was it.